My name is Jianhua, the curator of this art center, or a new art center. Yeah, opened 2 months ago. Yeah, our original art center in Santa Clara has 21 years old. Right now, we have a new baby in the San Jose Civic Center. Yeah. We are very honored here to invite the Professor Golden H. Chang come here. So the middle name H is very important. Yeah. In United States, there are two noted Golden Chang. Yeah, one is here in the West Coast, another one in the East Coast. Yeah, famous one. The two golden, the view to China is as different as the highest and the So this morning I posted in my social media WeChat. I said in United States for the Asian and Chinese study, if you are avid reader of Golden Age Chang, yeah, you are very lucky. But if you are the avid reader of Golden Age Chang, it's maybe a tragedy. It's similar like in China, mainland China. Yeah. If you are avid reader of Zhang Wei in northern China, you are very lucky. And if you are avid reader of Zhang Wei in South China, it's a tragedy too. Good that you know Zhang Wei or Zhang Wei. Yeah. So their names are very similar, but their viewpoints are totally almost different. So the difference so sharp and so large and so important is maybe related to your Sanguan three views in Chinese language. The view of the world, the look on the life, and even the value. So today we are very honored to invite the right Chang come here, right Golden. Even New York Times made the mistake of the Professor Chang with the other Chang. Yeah, it's true. Last year, yeah. So we are very lucky. Yeah, Professor Chang and his wife Vicky come here to join us. Yeah, for our lectures. Yeah. So our lecture's title is the Silicon Valley Asian Art in San Jose. So we have deep interest in Asian art. I know Professor Chang many years and I'm very lucky to learn a lot from him and his family, his father, Grandmaster Jiang Shuqi, the painting artist. Golden's hometown is in Jianhua, Zhejiang province, same as me. So we are town fellows of Jianhua. Jianhua is famous for the bacon, Jianhua Fotui, in the world. Yeah, Jianhua Fotui. But Jianhua is also famous for historians in 20th century. Yeah. One famous historian is Wu Han of Yiwu, of Jianhua district. He's an authority of Ming Dynasty, and deeply involved the Great Cultural Revolution. Wu Han. Second historian is Ping Di Hao, He Bingdi. He's a Jianhua fellow too. And the third one is here, Golden. So we are very proud as a Jianhua fellow. Our hometown can produce three excellent historians. So today we have this book. This book. This is semi selected works and semi academic autobiographies. Is it true? It's true. I almost read through the book, and very impressive to me. The feeling while I'm reading is very similar. I read Professor He Bingdi's memoir. Yeah, reading and then research 60 years in history. Yeah, it's published in English and Chinese too. Yeah, so if you have chance to read Professor He Bingdi's book, yeah, you can test what my opinion. Yeah. So Golden was born not here, not in the United States, but in Hong Kong. I think it's 1948, June, yeah, maybe June, definitely. Yeah. And in 6 months, yeah, his mom, yeah, carried him from Shanghai, yeah, to the United States. And his father, a famous artist, and the grandmaster in the bird and the flower paintings, Jiang Shuqi, finally moved from China to San Francisco in the March of 1949, and passed away in Peterman, in 1957. Yes. So Golden not born here, but grow up here, and you can read the book. Yeah, he showed condensely told his academic life. Yeah, a couple of things I think is important. So first thing is 1948. The second is 1970. Yeah, at the age of 22, he was invited to visit China, mainland China. Yeah, before Richard Nixon. Yeah. So, sit down, please. Yes, sit down. Yeah. So Golden, graduated from Princeton, in the bachelor, and there's a postgraduate students and a PhD in the Stanford University. Yeah. So today, we are very honored to listen Golden's sharing about his life and academic research in the Pacific and Asian relations with China and Asian Americans. Yeah. Thank you, Golden.
Oh, thank you. All right. I think I'm going to stand up because I can't see everybody in the back, and you can't see me if I'm sitting down.
Yeah.
So,
Golden, maybe you stand here. Maybe the Zoom can see. Yeah. Okay.
this is good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Appreciate this opportunity to share my work with you. I know a couple of you, but not everybody. I've given this talk to academic audiences, and I promise I will not give you an academic talk today. It'll put you all to sleep, even though it's cold. But something a little more informal and personal, and appropriate for this collection of people, audience, who are art lovers or interested in history. Won't be a purely sort of a formal academic discussion. But I appreciate Mr. Jianhua Shu's introduction and his hosting here today, and this book, which is out for a few months. I'll start by telling you a little bit about the book and then tell you about my life, because my life story tells you about the book. That is to say, the book is a product of my work as a professional historian over more than 30 years. And it very much reflects my background, my circumstances, my commitments. Jianhua referenced another Gordon Chang. He and I are very different politically. And I think that's why sometimes audiences are surprised to hear me speak, because they're expecting the other fellow who has very different views about things than I do. But let me begin here by, I just advance here this. All right, so this is the. Oh, okay. Oh, they. Oh, I got all that. We were a little bit late because I tried to upload another photo and it didn't make it into the PowerPoint. All right, well, I'll just tell you what the photo was. This is the cover of the book. It contains 15 essays I've written over many years. And 5 essays are from my earlier career, where I wrote about US-China relations and diplomacy and international relations. Next 5 essays are on Asian American, primarily Chinese American history, which reflect what we call in the United States sort of ethnic studies. And then the third 5 are essays related to art and art history, including essay on my father, which who Jianhua mentioned. So 3 very different writings, and which is unusual for a historian. Most of my colleagues at Stanford and elsewhere write very focused just on one person, on one time period, just on political history or something else. But I've written across the board on many different things: international relations, domestic life, art history, political history. So sort of a mix, which is quite unusual. People note that it's quite a different approach than what other historians do. Now, I came across this idea about putting together essays from across these fields when I was down at the Huntington Library down in Southern California. And this Huntington Library, I was there as a fellow. I'm very fortunate to have a fellowship there where I was in residence for a whole year to enjoy the extraordinary gardens and library facilities that they have. It's a beautiful place. If you have not been there, I highly recommend that you go. It is a very special place. I don't think anything else like it in the world. So when I was there, I had a lot of time just to think about my career, my life, and what I was going to write about. It occurred to me that I really should do something to bring together the different writings I've done in my life, because the audiences for each of those different thirds are different. So some people may know about my US-China relations history work. Some might know about my Chinese American history writing, and some may just know about art history, but each audience would not know about the work of the others. And I thought, well, out of my own interest, I should publish something so that audiences could see my work as a whole, all the 3 different sections. And that's what I've done here. Now, one portion, for example, in the first, where I talk about diplomatic history, one essay, to give you an example, is called JFK, China, and the Bomb. That's John F. Kennedy, China, and the atomic bomb. And I write that essay about John Kennedy's great fear of China, of communist China, and China's acquisition of the atomic bomb. And that was a very provocative essay because it showed how fearful President Kennedy was of China and how basically racist he was towards China, because he said that if China acquired the atomic bomb, everything would be over for the United States. It'd be terrible, and then China would just overrun the world. And he was quite extreme. And then he even proposed to the Soviet Union that the United States and China cooperate, and the United States and Soviet Union cooperate to bomb China, to destroy China's nuclear facilities. So it was a very provocative essay, and that started my career. I won't tell you much more, but just to give you a sense that that was one of my first essays. In the second section, I write about the Exclusion Act, Chinese Exclusion Act that the United States Congress passed in 1882, and how terrible that was, but also how complicated passing that legislation was for the United States. I hope most of you know about that legislation. It kept Chinese out of the country largely from 1882 to 1943. And it was a great setback and also very racially prejudiced against Chinese, as you know, kept Chinese largely out of the country. But I talk about the complications, I mean, in American politics to pass that act. And then the third section I talk about art history, including an essay on my father. Now I'll talk all about these things a little bit through these other slides. But I I included this other slide here of not Suzhou, but the Huntington Library Chinese garden. As you can see, it's a beautiful garden. And I had another slide, which I got under, and for some reason, we got the programs mixed up. And I put in a new picture there because that picture includes somebody who's in the audience right now, Loon. So Loon, you raise your hand, yeah, flew up from San Diego just this morning to join us here. And Loon's parents are back near Jianhua, but he's studying at UC San Diego. Well, great surprise that he arrived today. But the last time I saw him was in the Huntington Library. And I'll show you later on my phone the picture of us that we took. We walked around with your mother in Hangzhou in the Huntington Garden. So you can tell your mom that I had a picture here showing you and her in the slideshow. Now, let's see, make sure. You can advance it.
Yeah.
We had technical problems.
Lambo, Hilbert.
We can't advance it. Oh, there we
Oh, yeah,
All right,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So I've written many books, and I'll go this more quickly. These are just covers of several of my books. My first one, I said, okay, for instance, MES is my first book I published right out of graduate school and published about the United States, the relationship between China and the United States and the Soviet Union, where I talk about the atomic bomb and other things. Another book I've written more recently was on a long history of U.S.-China relations called Faithful Ties, published by Harvard University Press about 10 years ago. And I talk about the long history of, between America and China, going all the way back to even the colonial days and the China trade the United States conducted to bring tea and silk and other goods from China to the United States. And so I talk about the very close relationship in trade historically and also today. I mean, today's business environment is very different, but also a long continuity from the past. Now, other books I've published is on Japanese American history, Morning Glory, Evening Shadow, which was about a Stanford Japanese American professor who had to go to the internment camp. Many of you probably should know about it. I talk about his life and his writings and his career. It's very eerie because his career at Stanford preceded me. And in fact, I may be actually even occupying his former office. So there's interesting connections between the two of us, even though he was very different than me and lived in a very different time. But the issue of being a minority in the United States and his experience as an early Asian academic were very touching to me. And I talk about other matters here. You can see some of the titles of these books. I even talk about a South Asian writer down in the lower right-hand corner there, Caste and Outcast, was the name of a book that this man, Don Gopal Mukherjee published. He also went to Stanford as an undergrad and became an important writer. And so I talk about his life as an artist, as a writer, early in the 20th century in the United States. So that was my interest in race. And then most recently, I've published these books about Chinese railroad workers. And some of you have the book. Thank you for acquiring it and obtaining it. And please tell friends about the Ghost of Gold Mountain, which has turned out to be a very popular best good seller across the country. And I have hopes that it will be made into a movie one day. So stay tuned. The other book, The Chinese and the Iron Road, is also a book on the Chinese railroad workers and a little more as a collection of essays on specialized topics regarding the Chinese workers who helped complete the western portion of the Transcontinental Railroad. The cover of Ghost of Gold Mountain is from a painting by a Chinese American artist. I don't know if any of you know Mian Situ, who I think lives in Phoenix or Los Angeles. I'm not sure. We never met, but he's a fascinating artist because he was trained in China during the Cultural Revolution in hyperrealism, as you can see in his oil painting here, depicting Chinese workers, working through the Sierra Nevada.
Wonderful.
Uh,
Continue to speak.
Good. So I'm not going to speak about these. I've spoken before about these topics at other occasions, but these give you the sense of the. No, it doesn't work again.
往下翻。
Okay, all right, and then some work I've also been involved with on Asian American art history. Asian American art history, that is the history of artists of Asian ancestry who worked in the United States in the 19th century and 20th century up to 1970. I worked with other scholars to pioneer in studying this history of art history and social history that had not been covered before. Now there's lots of attention given to Asian American artists, including by our gallery directors such as Jianhua, the artists we have here today. And Asian American arts are very much more in evidence. But the history of this artistic production was unknown, largely unknown, until we published this book with this beautiful cover by a Japanese American artist. And actually, Jianhua just obtained another painting by the same artist that's in the gallery right next, in the next room. And I was helped to work. I worked with others on curating a big exhibition that was at the De Young Art Museum that was under the title Asian American Modern Art, as you can see here on the cover of the volume. Now I include there's a couple of little photos at the bottom. Does anybody know who that person is with me in those photos? Yoko Ono. So that's a high point of my career or life, to meet Yoko Ono in person. And we never met before, we haven't met since, but I hosted her to a talk at Stanford, and you can see her there. She was quite a character, and I have to say, very, very talented, and she very much impressed me. She's a very important artistic person, not just John Lennon's ex-wife, which is what she's often dismissed as. Now, I wanted to give you some biography of myself, some autobiography, and share with you some pictures, because my life is sort of certainly a way to understand me, of course, but also Chinese American, or at least one aspect of Chinese American history. Now, who are these people? Fong Chao and Lonnie Tom. They are my grandparents. And these pictures are of them on their wedding day. They were married in Grass Valley, north of Sacramento, up near Lake Tahoe. Haven't any of you ever been to Grass Valley? None of you. Well, some of you. It's a great place. Highly recommended to you. But you take a look at these photos and you think they're in China, but they're not. So Fong Chao, this is on my mother's side. Fong, I'm a Fong from the Guangdong region, from Guangzhou area. And Lonnie Tom was born in Marysville, just north of Sacramento. So on my mother's side and her mother, Lonnie Tom's side, I'm fourth generation Californian. And so there are many Chinese Americans who go back 3, 4, 5, 6 generations. We're not just all recent immigrants. But I love this photo because it shows them in their Chinese costumes, in their dress. But also, if you look closely, you can tell that it's in a Western photographer's studio. The other thing is hard to see here is my grandmother's feet.
Yeah.
Does anybody see anything her feet? Anything note about her feet?
It's not tiny one.
They're semi-tiny.
Yeah, same.
Semi-tiny. She was born in Marysville and had her feet bound in Marysville by her mother, my great-great-grandmother, because that was the custom. So even in the United States, female children were sometimes had their feet bound. Now she went on to have 12 or 14 children. And I can't imagine her having 14 children, especially where I show you where most of them were born and raised. They lived up here in a town called Washington, like Washington, D.C. or Washington State. It's a small mining town right along the Yuba River near Lake Tahoe, way up in the Sierra. Beautiful, rugged terrain. The river is rushing right down there. And this town was once one of the largest Chinese settlements in California in the 1880s and 1890s, because there were gold mines all around that area. And the Chinese worked not as prospectors, but as workers in the mines. And Grandpa, Fong Chao, was the manager of the largest gold mine in California, the Omega gold mine, the most productive gold mine in California. He didn't own it. He ran it for a white owner and made a lot of money for the owner. But he lived here. He became the manager and lived in this town called Washington. And he lived in the Chinatown, which would have been, which is at the lower right-hand corner of the photo, closest to the water. And that was the least desirable area to live in the town because it would flood. And they had, right down, you can see a couple of buildings. Those were, there are hundreds of Chinese at one time lived in this small town. And there's some historical markers there. So even today, people walk down there and they find pieces of Chinese ceramics and other things that were left behind that the Chinese left. The other photo, which I really love, is by his grandma with her firstborn child. And his name was Theodore. And I don't know if you can see this, it's not very clear, but the photo is a beautiful photo of grandma with her firstborn. She's about 18, 19 years old, something like that, maybe a little older, 20. And the baby, the beautiful baby, is named Theodore, born around 1904. Any reason why he would be named Theodore? Theodore Roosevelt. So he's named for Theodore Roosevelt. Her next born was named Alice Roosevelt. The next one was named Taft, William Howard Taft, the president. Another one was, the next one was Hiram Johnson, who was the governor of California, and so on down the line. And my mother was named Helen, Helen Wilson, Woodrow Wilson's daughter. So this was practice of naming your children. They all had Chinese names, but the English names were all after illustrious people. Okay. Now this is about 20 years later, and I love this photo. It's again fuzzy. It's clear here on the screen. And here's the members of the family. There were several that died in infancy, or some didn't make it all the way through. And one son, tragically, is not in the picture. The eldest son, the Theodore, is not in the picture because Grandpa sent him to China when he was 16 years old for education, to go back to the home village to get Chinese education and all that. But on his way there, when he was there, bandits kidnapped him and ransomed him for money, because it was a dangerous time in that area in China, and lots of bandits. And they never got the money to the bandits. And Theodore, baby Theodore, you saw the picture, died in never came back to the United States. The daughter, third from the right, anybody from San Francisco here? No, right. So you don't know, in San Francisco, there's a school called Alice Fong Yu School. Some of you know, you don't know, some of you know that. Well, Alice Fong is my mother's sister. She is the third on the right there, is Alice Fong. She married a Yu, so she became Alice Fong Yu. She became the first Chinese school teacher in San Francisco in 1924, the real pioneer. And the others all had interesting lives and careers. No, I'm sorry, she's the third from the left. They get like, but I think it's a beautiful family, don't you think? I think the guys are very handsome, and the girls are very good. So all very proud grandma and grandpa. Grandpa was 6 feet tall. You can see how lanky he is right there. Auntie Lorraine, who's between the two of them, the baby of the family, tragically died of great flu epidemic. You know, we've heard about COVID and flu. She was a victim of that, unfortunately. So this is, you can see they've become Americanized here. They don't look like in their wedding clothes in their wedding day many years ago. So now, one of the other brothers went off to war in 1942. He enlisted and he died in Alaska fighting. He was in the Army and they sent him to Alaska, a small island off of Alaska. And sadly, tragically, he died fighting in combat there. And here's Grandpa receiving the folded American flag in honor of his sacrifice. So you can see how sad Grandpa is having his son die. Grandpa, I'm pretty sure, was illegal. He was not in the United States legally, and he had violated the Chinese exclusion. But his son was American-born and served. So it's a very interesting connection between the two. And you can see in this newspaper, this was a Chinese-American newspaper published in San Francisco. It had at this top, San Francisco votes to repeal the Exclusion Act. And beneath that banner has Grandpa receiving this honor and the medal. I think an interesting juxtaposition of Chinese in America at that time. Okay. Well, I come along. I'm jumping ahead here to myself. I grew up in the Oakland Hills in a, not even predominantly, a hugely dominant white community. I did not grow up with other Asians or minorities or anybody. You know, come through home. My father was an artist. I'll get to him in a moment. And a very much all-American kind of environment. So here I am in the backyard in a Cub Scouts uniform. My brother and I are holding the banners, American flag that we made. So we thought ourselves as very American, quite a distance from Grandpa. I went to local elementary school. You should not have too much difficulty finding me in this picture, because I'm the only non-white person in the picture. I'm up in front as one of the officers, and for some reason I became active in school at an early age. Maybe because of or despite the fact that I was a minority, I wanted to do something and became active in all sorts of matters. Socially, my family was still very connected to the Chinese American community in Oakland and San Francisco. And our social life or community life was largely with other Chinese Americans, even though we didn't live among Chinese Americans, and my family members connected to the Fongs. And this was the Fong family Christmas party, all again, sort of very all-American. I'm not sure who the cousin is pretending to be Santa Claus in the middle. Lord, it's a very weird Santa Claus, I think. But this is the gathering mainly of my cousins from all the aunties and uncles that I had.
My father is in the back row, in the middle, in the dark suit. You can't see him too closely here, but he doesn't look well because he's not well. He's suffering from cancer. And he's already shrunken there. He was about 5'9", 5'10", like this. My other uncles they were all aspiring Chinese Americans, worked hard. One had a restaurant, another had sold insurance, another worked in a bank. These were the kind of careers that Chinese Americans males had at the time. The females were school teachers, nurses, or something of that sort. One auntie who's in this picture, but I won't point her out, and she was retired at the time, retired as a prostitute. She had come to the United States as a paper daughter. Many of you know what paper sons were. She came in as a paper daughter under a false pretense of some using an actual Chinese American born in the United States, used her papers to come into the United States, and she came in and worked as a prostitute numbers of years. I didn't know that until she passed away. When I remember going to family parties, I always just learned as Ayi, she was always a very sweet lady, didn't speak much English, and she would just sit there and have a good time with us. And only after she passed away did I learn she had worked as a prostitute. Of this gathering here, of all the cousins that I had, maybe 20 cousins or so, 4 of us went on to got PhDs. Interesting. My brother, myself, a cousin who's retired from Brown, and another cousin who's still working at Gettysburg College. Now back to my dad. This is a professional photo of him when he was healthy, sometime in the early 1940s. He had a spectacular career in China, and then came to the United States in 1941. And was here to promote advanced U.S.-China relations before Pearl Harbor. Then Pearl Harbor comes and he's stuck in the United States. So he stays in the United States for 5.5 years. And during the time, he was very active in promoting his art, but also introducing Chinese culture and painting to an American public. And this is where he becomes very well known. His most famous painting preceded him to the United States. He's on the lower left corner in the gown, and this was the magnificent painting he created to send to President Franklin Roosevelt, called 100 Doves by Godhu, or Messengers of Peace. And this is the gifting ceremony in Chongqing, where it was painted in 1941. Now, the people in this photograph are interesting. There's on the lower left, I believe it's Wang Shijie, who was the former foreign minister, I believe at the time. Then my father, then Nelson Johnson, who was the U.S. ambassador to China. And the next in the middle is Luo Jialun, who was president of the National Central University at the time, famous intellectual. Next to him, I think, is the British ambassador to China. I forget his name. And then it's Kung Shanqi, H.H. Kung, the round face, the chubby guy. And on the other side, I'm not sure who that is.
Wang Chonghui.
Wang Chonghui?
Yeah.
Who was?
It's a former foreign minister.
Okay. So this is a big deal. The painting is wrapped up and then sent to the United States, where it hung in the White House. So it became a very famous painting, maybe one of the most famous paintings in China, in the United States at the time. We didn't know very much about Chinese painting. And the painting was gifted to the United States, and it is held at the Franklin Roosevelt Museum in Hyde Park in New York. There's a colophon by Chiang Kai-shek on the far right border of the painting. So he came to follow the painting up to try to
again, I said, introduce Americans to Chinese art. This is the great focus, a great focus of the painting. Every dove in a different position. There's great energy and perspective in it, which is a result of Shuqi, my father's training in Western technique when he was an art student in Shanghai in the 1920s. Just as some other paintings of my father's work, as you can see here. I think the one on the left, you like this painting a lot.
Yes.
You know, the one on the left. And the one on the right is a big painting, Sea Eagles. A painting very much like this was also given to Winston Churchill around the same time as the Doves of Peace. And that painting is in Churchill's memorial home in England. This painting has been at the Cantor Art Museum, Stanford. Well, yeah, he had a frenetic time in the United States, traveling and giving talks and giving exhibitions, live exhibitions of his painting to audiences around the country. These are just some of the catalogs that you see in Kansas City, Boston, Los Angeles, and many other places where he painted for audiences and with fascinated audiences with his artwork. He even attracted the attention of Life magazine. This is Life magazine in 1943, ran a big spread about him and his artwork because his facility, his ability to paint quickly was so impressed to viewers that this was something unusual, that most people did not think art was done so quickly, but they presented this as with a clock right there in the corner of the photo showing how he was able to complete a composition in very quick time. So this is another great photo. You can see how fascinated people are, how happy he is to demonstrate his technique. I love the way he holds the brush. You know, some of you are artists, you know, the Chinese brush or even calligraphy or writing. This is how he painted like this. And he was always very proper in beautiful suits where he painted, and audiences would just look over and be fascinated with his effort to create a bird, a flower, a composition right before their eyes. Quite, I have to say, still very magical. We have photos of him, video of him doing so, and it's very captivating to see him paint. Well, to say he went all around the country and was honored. This is Shuqi in front of. Does anybody know where these pictures are? Want to take a guess?
Yeah.
Yep, Jianhua. The old DeYoung Art Museum in Golden Gate Park behind him, and is no longer there. But he exhibited 4 times at the DeYoung Art. And there he is. He's got an honorary degree from UC Berkeley, where he is depicted in the tour. These 2 other photos. Well, after he is done in the United States, he returns to China. During this time in the United States, he meets Helen, who was in those photos I gave you before, Helen Fong, my mother. They get married eventually in Shanghai, and she was in the United States, but he invited her to go to China after he returned to China. She followed him. They get married in Shanghai on October 1st, 1947. Interesting. And they live in Nanking, and then they go to Shanghai, Hong Kong for an exhibition he had, and also for the birth, because she had complications. And that's me as a baby.
What? What are you?
Hi, before I was waving, baby. So, and this is probably taken in Hong Kong. Well, they moved back after 6 months or so because things are turbulent in China, late 48, early 49. And they come back and they move to the Oakland Hills. And I'm now 8 years old, 9 years old, and in this photo with my brother, my mother, and my father, who worked at home, but
that within months he would pass from stomach cancer. Well, again, maybe because of or despite the fact that I was a minority, I did well in high school. I was very sort of conscious about race at that time, when there were very few other Chinese Americans, no other Chinese Americans in my class, no blacks, no Mexicans, no, I was the only Asian, well, there's one other Asian kid in my class of 200 at Piedmont High School, Yosh Yamada, whose father was a gardener. And then there was me, and we became distinguished and was voted to be valedictorian of the graduating class. There, I'm speaking there before the class, and I received all sorts of honors, including most likely to succeed. And I'm over there with the girl who's voted most likely to succeed. And she went to UC Davis, and I went off to Princeton. My freshman year at Princeton was difficult. It was exciting for me. It was so far away from home. I didn't know, I'd never been out there. I didn't know what the Ivy League was. And I was excited and optimistic that I'd have a great life career as an Ivy Leaguer. But I soon found that the Ivy League in Princeton at the time was not a good place. It was very prejudiced, very conservative, very backward in many social ways, although I got a great education. The other matter that really came to haunt me was the war in Vietnam, which was going on, and the whole black protests at the time in the late 60s. And I was very much affected by both of those developments and transformed my view. I had been sort of a liberal at the time, a John F. Kennedy liberal young person, and I became a radical because I was so angry about imperialism and racial prejudice. So 3 months of college, this is what happens to you, or me. When I become a radical here, and this front page article was sensational. A lot of Princeton alumni were outraged, looked like the crazies or the barbarians were taking over their university. I was speaking there in support of black students who took over a building to protest and try to get the university to divest stock in companies doing business in South Africa. And my friend there, Doug Seaton, who had the eye patch on, who looks like a pirate, he actually just had pink eye at the time, so he's not really a pirate. But I struggled through Princeton, had a good education, I said, and here's my graduation day with my mom, and very proud. My girlfriend at the time on my right, and another friend on my mother's side, Soo Jean Lee. She was among the first women to graduate from Princeton, which have been all male. So Soo Jean and I were friends, and Terry is on my right. And there's our family. We have different extended members of each family. We had dinner, Chinese dinner, as a banquet for our after graduation. Well, and now we'll jump ahead quickly. I eventually wound up in graduate school. I didn't intend to become a historian, but I went to some years as being an activist, and then went back to graduate school, got my PhD, and became very productive. And one of my proudest work is working on the Chinese railroad workers' history. I'm here down at the Huntington Library speaking about the workers there in the top left-hand corner when I was there 2 years ago. Now quickly, this is jumping. Now this was in 2017, I think. Jianhua, 2019?
Yes.
When we went back
In
to
Pujiang.
in Jianhua, Lijiang village near Pujiang, near Jianhua, where my father was from. So you can see here. And I was always interested in art. because of my father, and just I love art. And I had good fortune of meeting Jianhua some years ago, and he's been a great colleague and friend in helping bring attention to my father's work and helping me understand my father. Jianhua knows more about my father than probably anybody else. Okay. And one day when I was going through our paintings, I discovered this painting. And all of a sudden became quite touched by it, because can anybody read the inscription?
Yes.
Someone can read the
Yes.
inscription.
Yes, Stanford University.
1944, done
Yeah.
by Zhang completed at Stanford, Shidanfu Daxue,
Yeah.
Stanford University. So he had painted this. Can you go back to the painting before, picture before? In the building that you see beneath the tower, over my shoulder, is the one art gallery at Stanford. And that's where he painted that painting. So it always, and my office is just right next to the building. So every time I go to my office, I think, my father was right here. I walked in his footsteps. He painted right over there. So it was kind of amazing cycle of life and history. And we can see this, he did that as a demonstration there in Stanford University, 1944. And that's the story of the book, my life, and how I got to this place. So thank you for listening. I'm happy to make some speech. Thank you.
Yes, thank you a lot. So, any question?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's a very interesting story. And my director, Zhang Tongdao, we are looking to make a documentary for several families. If you are interested, I can contact you.
Yeah, documentary for what?
Documentary, because we are making a movie, and Chinese English pioneer here, past, present, and future. So we have a trailer already come out, a 5 minutes trailer of 10 years ago. So that's a past. Then we pick several family. So we pick one family from Santa Cruz, and his name is Georgie Al, and he's the 3rd generation. So.
All right, well, thank you.
Yeah,
We'll be in touch.
We can talk about that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our race room is on the system now. Yeah, we have race room inside. Anyone has questions? Okay, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your activism, your experience with activism. Care to share about it?
Well, I became an activist when I was in college, as I showed you, and became a protester. I was very angry about the war, and I remember the day in my dorm when I heard the news about Martin Luther King being murdered. These were very big events in my life, and some of the other students were not very interested, and they had other visions for themselves about what they were all about. But I was very affected by the terrible destruction in Southeast Asia, and the fear of war with China, fear of all that. The times are very different at that time, and I became convinced that I just couldn't live life normally. Which is why I was very reluctant and then to go to graduate school, because the graduate school make social change. And so I didn't last in graduate school very long. And then lived in San Francisco and became an activist. I became a labor organizer, a journalist, a protester in the streets, and lived near Chinatown, worked in protesting things such as, maybe some of you may know about the International Hotel was a big cause at the time to preserve housing and services for retired or older Chinese and Filipino workers. So I did a lot of different things such as that. I did wind up teaching at Laney College in Oakland, which was a community college. So I had a lot of contact with everyday people in the communities and junior college. As well as, and then I went on to back to graduate school. I taught at UC Irvine a bit and then returned to Stanford in 1991. So I've seen a lot of different things.
So, as a question for the similar period, I had during your early work on JFK. So that kind of racially based xenophobia kind of thing. How have you observed this throughout your career? Does it have ebbs and flows? You know.
Well, thank you, Hans. If I understand your question correctly, accurately, you're interested in my work on JFK, but more generally about race and foreign policy. Is that your question? Well, that was very much of interest to me, and which was also very controversial and provocative in the academic fields, because most other what we call diplomatic historians, those historians who focus on foreign policy, adopted a very establishment point of view. That is, they took kind of the point of view of what it would have been like as an official in the Roosevelt administration or Kennedy administration, Eisenhower administration, and really didn't offer many challenging perspectives on those administrations. They were not there to expose or critique, but more to sort of celebrate the great presidents. So in my work, I did very much something different, which was I tried to understand their policies, their attitudes towards China during the height of the Cold War, this long before Nixon goes to China. And in particular, I always have this assumption that they have harbored a lot of prejudices. The idea of American national interest or foreign policy is made by people, and they have ideological preferences, social preferences, which included ideas about race. So this is where the connection is between race internationally and race at home is connected in my work. That was part of the reason why I became very interested in Kennedy, because he had still to this day, he has a controversial legacy. He was there at the beginning of the Vietnam War, and some people think that he was responsible for it. Other people see him as a champion of peace. But what I wanted to understand, and the little that I began to see when I was a graduate student, is that he had very strong opinions about race and China and the competition with the United States. So that's what led to that specific article, but I also wrote more generally about his attitudes toward Asia, Asians, and China. I followed that up by looking at Dwight D. Eisenhower, President Eisenhower's view of China. And that's discussed in, I have that essay also in this book. And Eisenhower, much of the historical work focuses on the US and Soviet competition and conflict. But in my reading, I saw so much evidence that the United States was American leaders were deeply worried about China, even though China was much weaker militarily and politically than the Soviet Union. But China, there were other things that frightened American leaders about China. And I must say, continue to, I think, fester in the imagination and the thinking of American leaders, that they have overblown fear of the East. And at that time, that meant China in particular. So Eisenhower, as I documented in this estimate, throughout his years of office, continually was worried about China, how to support anti-communist movements against China and in Southeast Asia, and all the conflicts the United States gets involved in Asia are very much connected to, I think, certain racial attitudes that they have thinking about Asians. Most graphically and dramatically, comments they made included things like Asians have a lower regard of human life. We find that statement repeatedly said by top generals, political officials. And that was what caused them, what moved them to be so fearful, because they said, these people don't really worry about, like, they'll sacrifice themselves to conquer, to kill, and as opposed to we Americans who have a higher value of life. And so they saw this not just as a political contest, but as a civilizational or racial contest between the East and the West. And that continues, I'm not being glad, to today. And a lot of things I've heard, particularly as in current administration, about China and Chinese. Yes, there's competition. Yes, there are problems. But this fear of the East over the West is something which, to my mind, is remarkable and continuous. We even saw this during the COVID crisis, where Trump talked about COVID being the China virus, and the Chinese are seeking to destroy the United States. So I see this as a pattern.
Okay, Michael, yeah.
So Chang, my name is Michael.
You're the artist here, right?
Yes, I have to be.
Thank you.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for the wonderful lecture. I am feeling like witnessing a living history of Chinese Americans, especially from a person whose family has played an important role in the Sino-American relationship. So I thank you for that. And the question is, actually has something to do with the fact that I am an artist. I'm very curious to know, to find out, because your father was an artist, in what capacity does that have on you in terms of his influence on you, and from the perspective
Well, the question was, what influence did my father as an artist have on me? And that's a great question. I thought a lot about that. And I still have more thinking to do. One, very simply, is that he introduced my whole house was full of art. And I just sort of assumed that everybody lived with paintings here and books here and beautiful things here. He loved the garden, he loved flowers, he loved the painting, he loved his garden, and he worked with his hands. I was just thinking about hands today, actually. Rodin hands, artist hands, surgeons' hands are so intriguing to me. They had beautiful hands. I always remember long fingers, brown hand, very nimble finger, because of the way he was able to use the brush. I'm left-handed, he was right-handed. But I remember his hands, and he loved to work in the garden. He made fish ponds. Even though he did delicate things with his artwork, he loved working with his hands, with rocks and dirt and plants and fish in the ponds and so forth. He liked that organic connection with nature. So there was that direct connection with beautiful things, with art history. I remember art history books, Chinese art civilization. I would look at them when I was a youngster, just be interested in the pictures. But on another level, I think he was influenced because he was not a businessman. He didn't work in a restaurant. He didn't work in a store, or he was not 9 to 5. He worked, 9 to 9 every day. And what did he do? He walked in the garden for a while. He would paint. He just painted and painted and paint. That's all he would do. I mean, these artists have great respect because there's such a drive, such a passion, something inside that leads artists just to want to express, develop their skill, to be able to express something that's in their mind and their heart. I think that impressed me because he wasn't there as a moneymaker directly. I mean, he sold his paintings and all that stuff. But so I never had a role model of a man who had to go out for a wage, but as somebody who worked his passion. And I think that affected me. That I thought of myself as seeking what inspired me as a human, not just to make money, we have to make money, but to be able to be expressive politically, morally, ethically, intellectually in some way. My mother worked very hard. She was in some ways more the breadwinner after he passed away. She ran a business selling his reproductions. But it was different having a mother as the breadwinner model than me. And I have great respect and great love of my mother. I always think about how much I owe her. But for your question about him as an artist, I think of him as somebody who was passionately committed to his self-expression.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
Gordon, on the topic of war, race, and culture, what is one view you believe in the past 5 or 10 years, a little bit more recent, but no longer hold?
Great question. But what the question is, in the past 5 or 10 years or so, what was the view I no longer hold?
Yeah, you believe in the past.
That I held in the past.
Years, but you no longer hold it now.
That's a very, very good question. Because I've changed, and we all change over time. At one time, I believed there was going to be radical change in America. Going from the 1960s, 70s, there was going to be, and I wanted radical change because I thought the country was corrupt, backward, oppressive to people at home and around the world. And I thought I wanted to be part of the movement for change, for radical change. But I came to see, one, that was not going to happen. That the radicalism of the 60s and 70s ebbed and has in many ways disappeared. The country has become much more modern, even conservative, beyond even what I could have even imagined at the time. Many of us, friends, we thought it was just going to continue to become more and more liberal, become more and more radical, more and more left. We didn't understand the ups and downs that reality can take. And then I had to reassess my own part of that, and faith in that, or belief and support of that change, and become much less radical in seeing that models of revolutionary change, if I would call that, in Vietnam or China or wherever, have many more problems, real serious problems, than I've admitted or faced before. And I regret having that sort of almost, not so much naive, but that blind hope that there were models of a utopian society that could be realized, even in the United States, possibly the United States, whatever that meant, in alliance with other people, other radicals. And so radicalism became much less attractive to me. I still hold very strong values to oppose war, imperialism, domination, prejudice, racism, exploitation, and the stories about these issues, these expressions of disturb me, upset me very much. But I no longer this assumption that there's going to be some upsurge to wipe everything out and make things clean. And that the future world, if we want a better world, will be much more complicated to realize than I first at one time hoped. I hope I have maybe answered your question. Okay.
Thank you. Good. Yeah, you keep it. Before I met Golden, I read his first book, The Enemy of Friends, in complicated Chinese character, translated by Vicky as the owner of the main restaurant, in Palo Alto, and her father, And that book's the subtitle is the United States, China, and the Soviet Union between 1947 to 1972. 1972 is very understandable because Richard Nixon, took the ice broken through to China. But why do you pick up the starting year is 1947, not 1949?
I wanted to go earlier than 1949 when PRC is founded. Because 1946, 47, even earlier, the United States government began to have serious interest in the communist movement in China. Both because they believed the communist movement had possibilities becoming a major force within China, and also because the communists had connections with the Soviet Union. The Chinese communists had in the Soviet Union. So the United States being very concerned about Soviet communism, emerging Cold War, wanted to understand what the resources were of the Soviets had, and control or contact with international communists was part of that. And so they began already in the mid-40s to be keenly interested to understand what the relationship was between the Chinese communists, led by Mao, and the Soviet Union still under Stalin. And so even before, long before Richard Nixon goes to China, and people become aware that Nixon understood that China and the Soviet Union didn't get along, and he took advantage of that difference for the advantage of the United States. That was not new in many ways. In fact, it was very interesting to me, as I understood when looking at the documents, that American officials were keenly interested in the tension between the Soviets and the Chinese, even before 1949. So that when 1949 comes, there's a lot to do in the United States about what's called monolithic communism. The communists everywhere were all the same. They were all connected. They all cooperated and strategized together. And that was part of the explanation, the promotion in the United States for the Cold War. The United States had to stand up to communism everywhere in the same way. But in fact, many American leaders, and many did believe that, but other American leaders didn't believe that. They knew that a lot of these other communists around the world, even though they were communists, were not necessarily all connected to Stalin and the Soviets. That they were independent communists and radicals or socialists on their own. In Yugoslavia, Korea, Vietnam, and South Asia, the Philippines, and in China. And a lot of these places, these communists were local communists, nationalists. And so that's why it begins in 1947. As a historian, the question we always pose, and for those of you who think about history, you always need to ask yourself, when does a history begin? Does my history begin at my birth? Yes, but no, because I have parents. They give birth to me. I have inheritances. So my history, as I even try to show here, precedes my actual existence. So the idea of history, and this is why I love history, is that it forces us to think about what's really relevant. Where is there a beginning? Where is there an end? Is there an end? And how all these things are connected. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Gordon was born in a French hospital in Hong Kong, not in China. Very expensive birth
Really?
in Hong Kong.
I think it's same to live in a British house. So that's, yeah, so I was born in Hong Kong. My name, now there are other Gordon Changs, as you mentioned. But for many years, I was the only person I ever knew as Gordon Chang, an unusual name, I think. Now not so. Where did the name Gordon come from? It's not like Wellington. There are other. Well, some Chinese like these English names, Wellington. But the doctor who delivered me was Scott English doctor in Hong Kong named Gordon. So the naming tradition of naming babies for auspicious individuals went through my mother.
Yeah, because Gordon and his younger brother Ernie, is a famous professor in UC Davis. They donated all his family's archive, to the Stanford University. First to the Hoover archive, right now to the Green Library. It's about 35 boxes. It's systematically organized. So if you have any interest about the Jiang Shuqi's archival, you can go to Green Library to check it. By the guidance and the help of Gordon, I read through the archivals and finished to edit the chronicle book of Jiang Shuqi, Jiang Shuqi Nianpu. I think it will be published next year in China. So I know, something a lot better than Gordon right now. This location is in Santa Clara Street. It's a part of El Camino Real. Real. And I think in the 1.5 hour away, there is an Egyptian museum. In the Alameda. I think in 1955, we just saw a full photo, Jiang Shuqi in demonstration. Surrounded by the crowd. I think that photo was taken in 1955. Is the last public demonstration of Jiang Shuqi.
Oh, you think that photo?
Yeah. Because Egyptian Museum in the end of that year held 2 Asian American artists painting exhibition. One is Jiang Shuqi, another is Shiro Abata. Shiro Abata. So in that day, Jiang Shuqi made a very good demonstration, interpreted in English by his wife, Gordon's mom, Helen Fong. And Shiro Abata was still, there too. I saw the photo of Shiro Abata. Yes. Yes, this one.
Could be.
Yeah.
He looks like in the 50s.
He's very thin, huh?
He's got hair, it's gray hair, so this is later in the, a beautiful suit there. Well, we're saying 1955.
December.
But now, I mentioned the cover of this book, art book that we produced is by Shiro Obata. It looks like the sky is on fire.
Very beautiful.
Fascinating artist who came from Japan, and he arrived in San Francisco in 1906. 2 days later, the earthquake happened. So he's very much moved by his friends in California, and he loved painting California landscapes, including what he calls the sunset over the Sacramento Valley. So he used Japanese technique to envision the Sacramento, the Central Valley. Beautiful.
Yes, this book is very important for the readers who interested in Asian, Chinese, Asian American arts. Yeah, edited by Golden and Mark Johnson. Yeah, so this book is Asian American art from 1950, 18. I think 1850.
1850 to 1970.
And so 1970.
Yeah,
Wow.
1850, because there were Chinese
Yeah.
American artists in California in 1850.
Yeah.
And we discovered them, or we brought some attention to them, especially, interestingly, photographers. There were 4 Chinese photographers in San Francisco in the 1850s. And they took pictures of Chinese and others at the time. Where did they learn their technique? We're not quite sure. Maybe Hong Kong, maybe Guangzhou. But there's a history of Asians as artists in California long from the very beginning.
Anyone has questions? In the back? No. If you have questions, you can start. Yeah.
Any other question or comment? Okay, in the back, yeah, well, maybe.
One more question? Okay,
A
sure.
couple more, quick, go ahead.
You were first hungry, what inspired you most?
I couldn't hear you.
When you were hungry, you were creating,
Hungry?
yeah, like your heart, creation. Did you, what was your inspiration? Where did it start? Where did it come from?
When I'm hungry, what is my, to produce art? I'm not an artist, I'm a writer. But I have a connection. Our artists are special people. They do have that hunger. And I think many of us have hunger because we want to do something. Right? And I've always been very respectful and encouraging to anybody to follow their hunger. That is to satisfy them, their passion, another way of putting it. So my passion is I love to learn about things. The world, I think, is very, very complicated. The past is more complicated than we can ever imagine. And much of my work is by good fortune, which I mean is that I'm in the library, archives. You know, the historian, when I'm in the library, I don't mean just books, but I go look at old paper, old diaries, I look at letters, I look at documents that are hidden away. These things, which are called primary documents, I read these and I see something, I'm like, my goodness, never expected to read about someone's life in this way or read about a time in such a circumstance. So I get hungry in wanting to share what I see and learn to others. So that's how I respond to you. Thank you.
Yeah, Golden's another important book is the Ghost of Golden Mountain. Yeah, about the Chinese railway labors. So today we have some team of the 华裔剧社 and the president Sui is here, and Liu Yifan and the art chief Liu Jiawei. Yeah, Jiawei, can you introduce something about your work to us?
Thank you for first. Thank you for Mr. Shu invite us our group during today's one for Professor John's book story, and our Hawaii Art Performance Center will have a performance in February 7th and 8th. So welcome to everyone. Go to the stage and looking for the shows. And by the way, thanks again, Professor John, sharing wonderful stuff. Thanks again.
Well, you do great work. You're gonna performance about the railroad workers.
I just like, as you said, we have to let people know. You don't want to people know, people will forget. And it's not like trying to getting them defend to each other. Just let them know we're part of here. Well, our home is here, our children is here, my baby is born here. That's it. Just let all of the people know we're part of here. Thanks, Professor Zhang.
My pleasure, thank you. A couple of thoughts, if I may. What about discoveries? Have any of you read Ghosts of Gold Mountain?
I
A couple of
yes.
them. All right, well, very briefly, it's a story to try to tell the story of the Chinese Railroad and identify one person, a person in the book. His name is Honghua. He begins the book, and his story takes us all the way through the book. Well, there are some people a few reviewers who are skeptical. Did this person really exist? Or did I just make him up? No, he really existed. I have the documents. He's mentioned in newspapers. And they say, well, there were different other people. And they're like, no. So it's a little bit of a controversy. A month ago, out of the blue, I got an email from some person out on South Carolina, not Chinese. And he said he loved reading the book. And he wanted me to know that in his possession has a gun that he purchased. He's a gun collector of all things. That on the handle of the gun, it's like a cowboy gun. And on the grip, there is an inscription on the grip that says, to John Osborne, who was a sheriff in Auburn at the time. I believe Honghua lived in Auburn. It says, to John Osborne, the sheriff, with regards, Honghua.
Oh, really? Oh,
Amazing. And it's all authentic. I couldn't believe it. So there's all sorts of incredible things out there to discover. The last, I must give a shout out to Loom. And if you would say something about Loom's.
yeah, Loom, you
Yeah.
have any
Just a shout out to you.
comments?
And to your mother and maybe Jianhua, we see about what we're talking about here.
Yes, sure. Loom, do you have any questions or sharing? You're from San Diego.
Well,
Okay,
you should
sure.
say something.
Yeah. I introduced some special guests. We have artist Michael Chang. Yeah, he has this amazing show for here. Yeah, and he's a very good conceptual artist. Yeah, I made it very creative, very imaginative, and very pioneering. So we have in that corner, we have some documents about his behavior arts in there. And this special arts, this is the arts too. Yeah. So thank you, Michael. And we also have Professor Xie Xiaoze of Stanford University. Oh, Xiaoze, thank you for coming. Yes. Xiaoze has a wonderful digital art show of Dunhuang in the Beijing's Taimiao Imperial Temple. 地坛, yeah. It's the temple of Earth. Yeah. Very beautiful. Thank you, Xiaoze. And then we have Thank you for coming. And where's the Chen Qian? Yeah, the novelist. Yeah. And we have also the Loom. Yeah. Loom is from where our hometown, Jianhua too. Yeah. You know, Jianhua is a district. Yeah. In the west of Zhejiang and has 7 counties. Yeah. One county right now is very famous, like Yiwu. Yeah. Is Yiwu 小商品市场. The commodity market is world famous. And my hometown is Lanxi, county. And the Golden and the Loom's hometown is Pujiang. Yeah. Every country's language, dialect is different. We cannot understand each other in dialect. Yeah, it's a really very interesting place. Yeah, and yeah, Loom's parents, is runs the real estate business in our district, but they have devotion in the arts. Yeah, even created a private museum for Jiang Shuqi. So I just visited the museum, before their grand opening is this October. Yeah, so if you any chance come to our hometown, Jianhua is a wonderful place. We have the very famous historian like Wu Han. You know Wu Han. He's the deputy mayor of Beijing in 1950s and 60s. And by the order of Chairman Mao, who wrote a famous historical drama, 海力罢官, and intriguing the Great Cultural Revolution. And very interesting Wu Han was educated in the high school in Jinhua, the number 7 high school of Zhejiang province. And his students by Zhang Shuqi. Yeah, sure, you know.
No.
You know, Jiang Shuqi is a middle school art teacher in Jinhua Middle School. And Wu Han is his student. And Wu Han's classmate is also very famous too in the future. It's Eiqing. Yeah, it's Eiqing. Yeah, they're classmates. So Shuqi have famous students too. Yeah. So we have Wu Han, we have He Bingdi. You should know He Bingdi, one of most very important art historian in United States and in Asia. I mean, then the third is golden. And we also have grandmaster like Huang Binghong. Huang Binghong was regarded as an artist from Anhui, but actually his father moved from Anhui to Jinhua end of 1990s. 19th century. Their Huang family run a grocery store. And Huang Binghong was born in Jinhua and grew up until 19 years old. He had lived to Jinhua to his hometown in Anhui for the primary examination for Xiucai. Because the people in Jinhua, the students of Jinhua is worked so hard. Huang's family think if he stayed in Jinhua for examination, he would no chance. He goes back to Anhui. So Jinhua is a very good place. Welcome everyone goes there. So if anyone have questions?
Yes.
Okay.
So the big reason is my student parents, Zhang Pengdao, is a documentary director.
Okay.
We are going to make the documentary movie because I read is why we don't do this. If we don't tell our story, they will be lost forever. No one tell, right? So we have to let people know what our pioneers did, what we did, and what's the big difference. You can see the big difference from 150 years ago and now, and even 1940 when your father came here. So generation to generation different. Not only, America is an immigration country. Everybody comes here. Everybody working hard. So we all see. So they cannot do this like Chinese words. That's a big reason I'm doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Golden. So this book, what's your next book? After this,
We need a rest. Actually, and Hansong, friend over here knows a little bit about this. I've got reinterested in a scientist named Chen Shui-sun, and many of you probably know his name. And he was in the United States in the 1930s and 1940s, left in the mid-1950s. I never knew him, but he was a rocket scientist who came from Shanghai. He was from Hangzhou, Shanghai. So he went to Jianhua University, came to the United States, got his PhD at MIT, and then got a position at MIT as a professor in Caltech. So he was at the top of the science elite, a brilliant scientist. And then in the late 40s, the FBI began to investigate him because they said he was a red. He was maybe a spy. He was not any of those. And eventually they really hounded him. They did disservice to him. They basically said he couldn't leave the country because he wanted to return to China. They said, you can't leave. And then they said you were a communist, maybe we'll throw you in jail. So he was a very proud person, and he eventually said, I'm fed up with the United States, even though his children were born here. I met his son here in San Jose about 30 years ago. His son returned to China. And so I'm studying his life, Chen Shui-sun's life. It was very interesting because we know so many Chinese scientists now are facing difficulties because they're accused of being red or disloyal and so forth. So he was one of the first to undergo that experience. So I've looked at his life, and the amazing thing, I came across some documents that showed that he and Chen Shui-sun, my father, and other Chinese intellectuals in the early 50s were all in communication with each other.
Oh, okay.
And that there was, I forget his name. He was coming from Taiwan, I think, to the United States. And he wrote, he wanted to meet Chen Shui-sun, and the visitor said, Chen Shui-sun said, send your information to Zhang Shuqi.
Really? Wow.
And they would visit. So these were a very small group of Chinese intellectuals at the time. And they were very, very close. They're a very fascinating story about these very talented academics. What their life, what they did, what their life was like, and their politics, which were very complicated at the time. So that's what I'm thinking of doing next. So
Yeah.
Yes,
I check Shuqi's archive because Jiang Shuqi secondly came to the United States in 1949 March with a visa to visit the family reunion. Yeah, family reunion. But after the Korean War in 1951, Jiang Shuqi was noticed by Justice Department, who threatening send him back to China because he have no any so it's a permanent residential applications.
yeah, no visa.
And no visas.
Out to last his visa status.
Yes, it's a problem. So there has some legal issues.
Deported.
Yeah, for Jiang Shuqi stayed here. Yeah, it's I think by help of the very important people. Yeah, to stay here. So in the early of 1950s, you can see the prominent artists like Jiang Shuqi made the problem. Yeah, for the political reasons between United States and China. Yeah.
Well, Jianhua, thank you for hosting it today.
Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you.
And unfortunately, the book is not available, but Jianhua will have copies where you can